Welcome to the Occult London podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to exploring magic, mysticism, the Kabbalah, as well as other topics. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please take a moment to leave us a review and a rating on iTunes or wherever you tune in. It really helps more folks find us and helps us to continue to get this message out there. Also, don't forget to check out occultlondonpodcast.co.uk to subscribe. And if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do through Buy Me a Coffee. The link is in the show notes. It really helps cover the costs of keeping this going because everything's getting really expensive, and any contribution is genuinely appreciated. Also, if you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to reply. Now let's get into the episode. With the time of Halloween coming round again, it feels like the right time to talk about death. Not in a grim way, but from a Kabbalistic and magical perspective. And it's a theme that fits this particular season, especially since both Halloween and Samhain focus on honouring the dead and the cycle of life and death. As we've spoken about in previous episodes, Samhain is a pagan festival that comes from the Celtic tradition, and it was usually celebrated from October the 31st to November the 1st as a way to mark the end of the harvest and the start of winter. The name Samhain actually came from the old Celtic words meaning summer's end. And the ancient Celts, about 2,000 years ago, divided the year into two halves, the light half and the dark half. So Samhain marked the end of the light half and the beginning of the darkness and the cold and the winter. In Celtic belief, summer represented light and life, whilst winter represented the darkness, the death, and things like the Cailleach. Samhain was the turning point between the two. And the opposite festival, obviously, to Samhain is Beltane, which celebrates the return of the light and the spring and, the rise of passion and reproduction and everything, fertility, all of that really nice, fun spring stuff. And because of this, Samhain became linked with the idea that the boundary between the living and the dead was thinner at this time of year, allowing spirits to move freely between the worlds. Samhain started as a harvest festival, but it also became a time to remember and honour the dead. And many cultures have similar traditions, setting a place at the table for ancestors, for example, which is also known as a dumb supper, lighting candles, burning incense, or visiting the graves of loved ones that have departed, bringing gifts, wine, and flowers and music. Even the Christian tradition honours this festival as well, with obviously All Saints and All Souls. In the Christian tradition, All Souls Day is observed every year on November the 2nd, right after All Saints Day, which is the 1st of November, and it's time to set aside to remember and pray for all those who've passed away, especially the souls who are considered to be in purgatory. And this tradition dates back to the 10th century when Saint Odilo of Cluny established the practice, and it becomes widespread in Western Christianity by the 14th century. So Halloween and Samhain are often described and really feel like times when the veil between the worlds is at its thinnest, and maybe that's also part of why this season feels so mysterious and magical. And within the Kabbalistic tradition, as in many other spiritual paths, death isn't seen as an ending, but as a transition. It's understood as a passage where the soul lets go of its limitations and returns to the infinite. And in both Jewish and Hermetic Kabbalah, Death is seen as a stage in a larger divine cycle of descent and return, a process through which creation itself moves back towards balance and harmony. Central to this viewpoint is the Kabbalistic doctrine of Gilgul, meaning revolving or transmigration of souls. And this idea is first articulated in the Kabbalistic text known as the Sefer HaBahir, or the Book of Brightness, which is a short 12th century mystical text from Provence in France, which was attributed to Rabbi Nehunia ben Hakana. And this explores themes like the 10 Sephirot, the divine light, and also the mystical power of Hebrew letters. And it became one of the earliest and most influential foundations of Kabbalistic thought. The idea of Gilgul, however, is also later elaborated in the Zohar and also in Lurianic Kabbalah texts such as the Treatise on the Revolutions of Souls, which was later incorporated by Christian Nor von Rosenroth into his Kabbalah Denudata, 1677 to 1684. And it's also discussed by authors such as Samuel MacGregor Mathers, one of the founders of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, although he didn't actually include it in his translation of the Kabbalah Unveiled. Basically, the idea of Gilgul teaches us that each human life is but one revolution in the soul's ascent towards divine perfection. And in Kabbalistic teaching, the soul is understood through several levels, each linked with a specific sephira on the tree of life. At the highest point is Yechida, connected with Keta, the crown, which represents the pure essence of the soul that remains one with the divine. Below it is Chia, associated with Chokhmah, or wisdom, the inner life force or will that moves the soul towards purpose. Then we have the Neshama, which is related to Bina, understanding, and the whole supernal triad of Keta, Chokhmah and Bina is also known as Neshama as well, or the greater Neshama. Moving on down the levels, we come to the Ruach, which is linked with Tiferet, and this is the spirit of thought, emotion and moral sense, and it's also the part that seeks harmony between higher insight and everyday life. And then below that we have the Nepesh, which is linked with Yesod. This is the vital soul, the animal instincts, feeling, desire, sexual desire as well. And then finally we have the Gupf, which corresponds to Malkut, which is the physical body, and is also the vessel through which all of the other parts act in the world. Together these levels form a complete picture of the soul's structure and its path of growth from material life in Malkut to the divine unity with oneness in Keter. However, in relation to the ideas of Gilgul, the main aspects of the soul that are mentioned are the Nepesh, Ruach and the Neshama, and each of these is thought to have its own destiny at death. So when a human being dies, the Nepesh, which links with the Yesod, Sephiroth, is meant to sink down into the earth. The Ruach, which links with the Tiferet, is meant to remain near the body, and then the Neshama ascends to the throne of God, which is really the supernal triad, where it is sustained until it is ready to return to physical existence. And the structure of these aspects of the soul is described by Cohen Sherbok in his Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism as follows, and I quote, "The soul itself consists of three faculties. The lowest is the Nepesh, the gross side of the soul, and it is the vital element that is the source of animation. From the Nepesh springs all movement, instincts and physical desires. The next faculty is the Ruach, spirit, which constitutes the moral element. Finally, the Neshama, the supersoul, is the rational component. It functions in the study of the Torah and facilitates the apprehension of the divine. These three dimensions of the soul derive from three Sephiroth. Neshama, being the soul in its most perfected state, emanates from the Sephirah of wisdom. Ruach from the Sephirah of beauty, and Nefesh from the Sephirah of foundation. It is the aspect of divinity that comes most into contact with the material universe. These three dimensions of the soul enable humans to fit into God's plan of creation and empower them with various duties to the cosmos, which is seen as a reflection of the heavenly realm. Also, the interrelation of the three aspects is also described in the Zohar as follows. In these three, the Neshama, Ruach and Nefesh, we find an exact image of what is above in the celestial world. For all three form only one soul, one being, where all is one. Above the Nefesh is the Ruach, which dominates the Nefesh, imposes laws upon it and enlightens it as much as its nature requires. And high above the Ruach is the Neshama, which in turn rules the Ruach and sheds upon it the light of life. And that's the Zohar. So this process of Gilgal, which is also interesting, hinted at with the name of Keter's heaven, which is Rashith Ha-Gilgalim, or the first swirlings, reveals that death and reincarnation are aspects of a single movement. The soul's upward spiral toward unity with Godhead. And a perfected soul no longer needs to return to the material life. It's meant to rest in holiness until the time of resurrection when, as the tradition teaches from the Zohar, God will cause dew, which is the divine light, to exude from his head that will flow through the Sephiroth until it reaches the earth. This process of what happens after death as well is described by David Cohn as follows. After death, the soul leaves the body for its ascent to the higher realms. It is only after death that the soul becomes conscious of the Neshama. For the Kabbalists, the Neshama must become pure and perfected in order to return to the infinite from which it emanated. In this light, the doctrine of transmigration of the soul became an important element of the Kabbalistic system. According to the Zohar, all souls must undergo transmigration, and men do not understand the ways of the Holy One. They know not that they are brought before the tribunal, both before they enter into this world and after they leave it. They know not the many transmigrations and hidden trials which they have to undergo. Such transmigration is required because the soul must reach the highest state of its evolution before it can return to its source. As we can see, through each life, death, and rebirth, each soul is thought to go through a state of purification. But also each soul, as it is purified, participates in something known as tikkun, the restoration of cosmic order. Even a soul that has fallen into corruption remains part of this vast process, though it may return in lesser forms, animal, plant or mineral, until it is purified, which is similar to the Eastern ideas of karma in Hindu and Buddhist traditions. The famous magician Eliphas Levi also wrote about this process in his doctrine of transcendental magic. Eliphas Levi, for those who don't know, lived 1810 to 1875, and he was a French writer and occultist who played a major role in shaping modern Western esotericism. Eliphas Levi was a French writer and occultist who played a major role in shaping modern Western esotericism, and he also combined ideas from Kabbalah, magic, Marxism and Christianity into a unified system of thought that later influenced many movements like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Aleister Crowley, Thelema, etc., and many others as well. But Eliphas Levi describes this process of the separation of the different parts of the body after death as follows, and I quote, "After death, then, the divine spirit which animated a man returns alone to heaven and leaves on earth and in the atmosphere two cadavers, one terrestrial and elementary, and the other aerial and astral. One is already inert, the other is still animated by the universal movement of the world soul, but is destined to die slowly, absorbed by the astral powers which produced it. The terrestrial corpse remains visible, the other is invisible to the eyes of terrestrial and living bodies, and can only be seen through the applications of the astral light upon the translucent, which communicates its impressions to the nervous system, and thus affects the organ of sight to the point of being able to see the forms which are conserved and the words which are written in the book of the vital light. After a time, a man's astral corpse evaporates like pure incense by rising towards the upper regions. But if that man lived in crime, his astral corpse, which hold him prisoner, continues to search for the objects of his passion and wishes to live again. He torments the dreams of young girls, bathes in the vapours of spilt blood, and loiters around places where the pleasures of life have flowed. He still watches over the treasures he had possessed and hoarded. He exhausts himself with painful efforts in order to make himself material organs so as to live again. But the celestial bodies suck him up and drink him. They feel his intellect weaken, his memory slowly fading, his entire being dissolving. His old vices appear to him as monstrous figures and chase him. They attack and devour him. The poor devil thus gradually loses all the members of his body, which had served him in his iniquity, and then he dies for a second time, and forever, because he then loses his personality and his memory. Souls which must live, but are not yet entirely purified, stay captive in their astral corpse for more or less time, where they are burnt by the odic light, which wishes to assimilate and dissolve him. It is in order to escape their astral corpse that souls sometimes enter the living and live with them then in a state Kabbalists call embryonate. So as you can see, Eliphas Levi is talking about the person being made up of different parts, and each has a separate fate after death. The divine spirit, the pure kind of divine spark, immortal part, returns up to heaven to a neshama, but the physical body, the guf, stays on earth and decays. But the astral or aerial body, which kind of roughly corresponds with the ruach, a subtle form, remains for a time, and it's this astral part that's holding on to the person's emotions, the habits and desires. So if someone lived badly or was ruled by selfish passions, this is the part that becomes restless and clings to the world, trying to relive what it once enjoyed. What I found interesting about this idea is that it's also very similar to the Eastern concepts of pretas, or hungry ghosts. And these are thought to be spirits of people who were consumed by greed, desire or attachment during life. And after death they exist in this state of constant craving, always hungry or thirsty but never able to be satisfied. And they're often depicted with these huge bellies and tiny mouths, symbolising their endless longing and inability to fulfill it, because obviously they don't have a physical body. These beings wander the world, drawn to the things they once desired, but then can never really experience them again. And it's thought that through acts of compassion and prayer, these hungry spirits can be helped and even released from their state of imprisonment in the physical realm. There's an interesting story that illustrates this idea from the Pali canon, in which Sariputta Bhante dialogues with a female spirit. Sariputta Bhante, for those who don't know, is one of the Buddha's closest and wisest disciples. And the word Bhante means venerable, which was a title for a monk. So he was known for his clear understanding of the Buddha's teachings and the Dharma, and for his calm and kind nature. And this is the story of Sariputta Bhante and the Suffering Ghost. And it goes as follows. One day, Sariputta Bhante saw a hideous female ghost, thin, naked and suffering. He asked, "You are naked and very ugly. Your veins are popping out. Who are you?" The ghost replied, "I am a ghost, sir. I endure suffering in the realm of Yama. Due to an unwholesome act committed in my human life, I have been reborn as a spirit. I must wander the earth for 500 years, naked and perpetually hungry. This is the consequence of my wrongdoing. Please show me compassion, noble monk. Kindly offer something and share the merits with me, so that I may be liberated from this suffering." With pity she pleaded, "Please have compassion towards me, O monk." Out of kindness, Sariputta Bhante offered monks a handful of rice, a piece of cloth, and a bowl of water, and then he shared the merit with her. Instantly she became radiant and clothed in fine garments. Sariputta asked, "Who are you, with heavenly beauty shining in all directions like a star? Why are you so beautiful? What merit have you collected when you were human?" And the ghost answers, "Sariputta Bhante, you were very compassionate when you saw me in a miserable state, thin, starved, and naked with rough skin. You offered the monks a handful of rice, a piece of cloth, and a bowl of water, then dedicated the merit to me. Now look at the result of offering a handful of rice. For 1,000 years I will eat delicious food whenever I want. Look at the result of offering a piece of cloth. I have as many clothes as King Nanda. Still, I have more clothes than that, made from silk, wool, linen and cotton. There are lots of expensive clothes. Look at the result of the offering of water. I have gained a beautiful pond with clear and cool water. It is surrounded by fine sand, and there are fragrant lotuses and lilies, with flower petals floating in the water. I am very happy in the water. I am not afraid of anything. You are very compassionate to me, Bhante. I have come to worship you." Through this act, Sariputta Bhante showed that even the smallest offering, when given with compassion, can bring great blessings and relief from suffering, even for those who have passed beyond. And we can see from this story that the living can offer sustenance and compassion to those who have gone before, through prayer, through ritual, and also through acts of kindness to others, because obviously he dedicated an act of merit to the ghost, and that enabled her to have this massive amounts of rice and beautiful clothes, bowls of water, everything you can think of. But these things can offer sustenance to those who have gone before, and it also shows that there is a connection to the original divine source even when you're in that state of the astral shell. And we can help and communicate with the ancestors in the same way that Sariputta Bhante did, through offerings, through compassion, through kindness to others. And our offerings will be greatly received. As the poet Sigrid Sassoon wrote, "Behold these jewelled merchant ancestors, foregathered in some chancery of death. Calm, provident, discreet, they stroke their beards, and move their faces slowly in the gloom, and barter monstrous wealth with speech subdued. So as we can see from the story about the ghost from the Pali Canon, we can see that according to the Kabbalistic doctrine, what we do in life and our daily actions is very important, and that the ideas of death and rebirth are closely linked to ethics, good behaviour and karma. In Kabbalah, living a moral life isn't just about following divine rules, it's about taking part in the healing and the purification of the world. And this process is known as tikkun, which is a Hebrew term meaning repair or restoration, and is a process of working out what is necessary for continued progress in evolution. Tal Malachi, in his excellent book Gnosis of the Cosmic Christ, which I recommend to anyone who's interested in the Kabbalah, explains this concept really well, I think, when he says the following, I quote, "According to the tradition, both the metaphysical structure of the universe, the Sephirot and Olamot, and the human soul are in the process of evolution and in need of tikkun, the working out and healing of whatever is necessary for the ultimate fruition of creative evolution. Because human souls are microcosms of the macrocosm, the metaphysical universe. The tikkun of human souls brings about the tikkun of the Sephirot and Olamot. The primary agent of this tikkun is Geburah, the holy law or principle of evolution itself. It is the agent of Zimzum, through which series of Nefashim and Ruachot come into being as individuations of the one life power. Likewise, it is the agent that tries and tests every development in the process of creative evolution to see if it is strong, good and true. And when it is ready, it passes into the next cycle of progress. And what is not ready goes into a cycle of regress to work out what is needed for progress. All according to the law. It is in this sense that we may understand the title of Geburah as din, which means judgment." That's a quote from Tal Malachi. But what we can say, what Malachi is saying, I think, is that both the universe and the human soul are growing and healing over time. So when we work on ourselves, when we're doing the great work, the magical practice, the prayer, the daily meditations, we're also helping to heal the world around us. And the same energy, the same divine energy that shapes the universe also lives within us. So the balance of creation depends on the balance inside each person. And balance is obviously an important part of judgment, which is the title of the Sephiroth Geburah, which is also mentioned in that quote. So the process of growth and correction is guided by the divine spark, and is what keeps both humanity and the cosmos moving towards harmony. As another writer wrote, "My teacher, may his memory be for a blessing, cautioned me and all the brethren who are with him in this fellowship that before praying the morning service we should take upon ourselves in the positive commandment, and you shall love your neighbour as yourself. By this means his soul will be able to rise above and effect cosmic healing, tikkun. Each and every one of us must bind himself to the others as if he were one limb within the body of this fellowship." Also in the Zohar, it mentions this relationship when it says the following: "It is from below that the movement starts, and thereafter is all perfected. If the community of Israel failed to initiate the impulse, the one above would also not move to go to her, and it is thus the yearning from below which brings about the completion above." So I think that the idea that it's from the below that the movement starts and then thereafter all is perfected is a really special and beautiful idea, as it's also often how magic works. We can invoke or pray as much as we want, but usually in order to make our magic work, we actually need to get off our asses and take the first step in the material realm. And then the heavenly realms, the divine beings, the angels, the demons, whoever we're working with will respond. So if you're doing magic for money, for example, you might need to go out and get a job. Or if you're doing magic for love, you might need to go on some dating sites or actually go and talk to some people. It's not going to happen when you're just sitting in your house. There always needs to be a physical action, and we cannot just sit on our sofa and wait for the magic to happen, basically. But this idea of tikkun as something that works both within us as an inner force of purification and in the cosmos as a power of restoration is also deeply important. In Lurianic Kabbalah, tikkun is seen as this redemptive energy that heals what was broken in creation, restoring harmony to the world shattered in the primordial breaking of the vessels, which is known as Shevirat HaKalim. This ancient teaching speaks of a moment during creation when the divine light was too vast, too intense for the vessels meant to hold it, and they broke apart under its power, scattering divine sparks through all the realms of existence. And this is described in the Zohar as follows. All those lights which shone and were diffused, when they were diffused, were not as they should have been, and therefore the vessels broke. And also in a modern text, in this way God sent forth those 10 vessels like a fleet of ships, each carrying its cargo of light. But the vessels were too fragile to contain such a powerful divine light. They broke open, split asunder, and all the holy sparks were scattered like sand, like seeds, like stars. So in the Lurianic Kabbalah, the primordial breaking of the vessels, or Shevirat HaKalim, is thought to have resulted in the world being composed of broken fragments of divine light. In the Lurianic Kabbalah, the primordial breaking of the vessels, or Shevirat HaKalim, is thought to have resulted in the world being composed of broken fragments of divine light, and is seen as the source of disharmony and evil in the world. The concept is also central to the idea of tikkun that we have been discussing, meaning repair or restoration of the world and also the psyche, as it suggests that humanity can help restore the broken world by gathering the scattered sparks of divine light. It's believed that it is humanity's task to raise these sparks and return them to their source. And this cosmic process also has similar parallels in the Hermetic Kabbalistic tradition, where tikkun can be seen as being similar in some ways to the ideas of the inner alchemy of transformation. We also see the theme of the breaking of the shells in the Golden Dawn tradition, and also Martinism and the reintegration of beings, which is closely linked to the Jakob Boehmer. In the Golden Dawn, Garden of Eden before and after the fall diagrams, especially, they really kind of act as symbolic maps of the tree of life as it relates to the state of divine harmony versus fragmentation. And you can easily find these diagrams on the internet if you do a quick search. But basically these diagrams were used as part of the curriculum of the order. The diagram called the Garden of Eden before the fall shows the tree of life in its perfect form. The 10 Sephiroth are balanced and connected within the 4 rivers of paradise, which represents the flow of divine light. And each sphere passes this light smoothly from Keter at the top down to Malkut at the base. In this state, everything is whole. Humanity reflects the divine perfectly, with no separation between God, nature, and the self. However, if you look at the Garden of Eden diagram after the fall, the Golden Dawn image shows the distortion and division. So Dart, or knowledge, becomes an abyss that separates the higher and the lower worlds, and Malkut, representing the kingdom or material world, is cut off from the rest of the tree. And these diagrams really mirror the breaking of the vessels, or Shevirat HaKalim, where the divine light no longer flows freely. Instead, it becomes scattered through the klipoth, or shells, creating a world of duality and separation. And in this post-fall state, the Garden of Eden becomes a symbol of a broken world where divine sparks are trapped in matter, waiting to be made whole again. Through inner work on oneself, through purification and doing good, it was thought that the world and everyone in it can be redeemed back to their original place. As Dan Cohen-Sherbrooke writes, "For the mystic, deeds of tikkun sustain the world, activate nature to praise God, and bring about the coupling of the 10th and 6th Sephiroth. Such repair is accomplished by keeping the commandments, which are conceived of as vessels for establishing contact with the Godhead and for ensuring divine mercy. Such a religious life provides the Kabbalist with a means of integrating into the divine hierarchy of creation. The Kabbalah was able to guide the soul back to its source in the infinite." What stands out to me in that paragraph particularly is the mention of the connection between the 10th and the 6th Sephiroth. In the Hermetic tradition, these correspond to Malkut, the kingdom, and Tiferet, beauty. These two Sephiroth represent the sun, or sun, and the bride, the offspring, and the counterpart of Abba and Ima. And what's being described here is that through the practice of tikkun, through spiritual restoration or repair, the magician or the mystic can bring about the alchemical marriage, the union of opposites, that also represents a kind of symbolic death and rebirth in Tiferet. This marriage can also be seen to reflect the processes linked to achieving knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, which is a key stage in the spiritual work of the magician, as the connection with the Holy Guardian Angel traditionally takes place in the sphere of Tiferet. This union of the spheres is also written about by Isaac Luria when he wrote the following: "Indeed, the female waters of Malkut are the souls of the righteous. When one gives himself over to death, it is as if he expires from the world, and his soul cleaves above in her," i.e. Malkut's. Yesod in the secret of a well, and she becomes a well of living water. Then the male waters descend from Tiferet, and this holy union is properly accomplished. He also wrote, "The blessed female waters of Binah are the righteous, who give themselves on the sanctification of the name. For she is Binah, who is called Great Name, and it is holy for him to ascend from below to above in the secret of the holy, which is Chokhmah. However, giving oneself over to death is in the secret of Malkut, which is the place of death, and the sanctification of the name is above." Before we continue, I just wanted to quickly remind everyone about the qualities of the Sephiroth of Malkut and Tiferet. So Tiferet is the 6th Sephiroth, which means beauty, and this represents the kind of the masculine aspects in this union. In the wider framework, it's part of the Zaya Anpin, which is the lesser countenance, and Zaya Anpin expresses the emotional and masculine qualities of the divine, gathering light from the higher Sephiroth and passing it downwards. So Tiferet's associated with the sun and really with the spiritual heart, a point of balance and harmony. Malkut, the kingdom, this represents the feminine aspect, is also known as Nukva, or the bride. This is the final Sephiroth on the Tree of Life, where all the divine energies come together and take form in the physical world. Malkut is linked to the earth and also to the Shekinah, which we talked about in our last episode. And it's also the indwelling divine presence that connects the heaven and the earth. So we can say that through the practice of tikkun, or restoring the world, we aim to restore the world at Messiah to its original state of spirituality. The human being as a microcosm of the divine macrocosm performs within the psyche through magic, through spiritual work. Really what God or the divine performs within creation. So the restoration of the tree of life can also be seen as being simultaneously the purification of the world and the self. The magician or the mystic's training begins with refining of the inner nature and purification, which then also has the effect of restoring his psyche, but also the world around him or her. In this way then, the practice of tikkun becomes a spiritual practice and a cosmological principle. And no figure in history has expressed this synthesis more profoundly, I think, than Isaac Luria, who we quoted from earlier. He was also known as Ari. He was a deeply influential Jewish mystic whose ideas really reshaped the way that people understood Kabbalah. Born in Jerusalem in 1534, and later he moved to Safed, he developed a really kind of powerful vision of how the universe came into being and how it could be healed. And Luria taught that God first withdrew to make space for creation, which is this process called Zimzum. And that this process led to a cosmic break, which is a Shevirat HaKelim, and that as humans beings' role is to repair the world, which is tikkun olam. And although he didn't write his teachings down himself, his student Rabbi Chaim Vital preserved a lot of them, and he's influenced an awful lot of mystics and magicians over the generations. Luria taught that when enough sparks have been raised through tikkun, creation will be healed and the unity of God made manifest once more. Luria wrote, "And when enough holy sparks have been gathered, the broken vessels will be restored, and tikkun olam, the repair of the world, awaited for so long, will finally be complete. Therefore it should be the aim of everyone to raise these sparks from wherever they are imprisoned, and to elevate them to holiness by the power of their soul." In this cosmology, death itself participates directly in the work of tikkun. The dissolution of the body releases the divine spark that's contained within it and allows it to ascend up to the neshama. Morning prayers, rituals, acts of compassion and merit towards others also serve as a kind of means of guidance for these ascending sparks. So they aid in not only the people that have passed away, but also for the entire web of creation. But this process is also never final, unfortunately. So just as the primordial vessels once shattered, so too are vessels within creation, within the human soul, continually breaking and being remade. So each act of compassion, each cycle of loss and renewal kind of participates in this internal rhythm of shattering, healing, descent and ascent, through which the divine light is constantly being revealed. So it's almost like this huge wheel that's turning. It's a cyclical process of continual breaking, being remade, loss, renewal, birth, death, descent, ascent, etc. As Tao Malachi writes, "The masters of the tradition say that creation revelation is a river of light that continually pours forth from the infinite. The Sephirot of the 5 Olamot are currents in the river of light, and channels of the light through which creation revelation transpires. The influx of the supernal light is constant. Creature and creation are continually flowing out of God and Godhead. The reality truth continuing of creator and creation is not fixed or static, but is in constant flux, continually pouring out of the divine, in what appears to be flow and ebb. Everyone and everything is an expression of God's word and wisdom, the light of Messiah. One could say that it's through God. It is as though God is continually breathing out and breathing in creatures and creation, and that everything is the radiant holy breath of God, the holy and bornless spirit. Vessels are continually being created and shattered, and the process of their mending or healing is a continual process. If the Sephirot and Olamot are the macrocosm, the universe or creation, and we are the microcosms, the universe or creation in miniature, then our soul is a vessel constantly being formed, shattered and reformed at a new level in the process of creative evolution. While creation speaks of a descent or involution, Revelation speaks of an ascent or evolution. So we can say that in both Jewish and Hermetic Kabbalah, death is really this gateway to a higher order of consciousness. Freed from the destiny of matter, the soul rises through the inner worlds, passing from Malkut, the earth, to Yesod, the sphere of the moon and the astral, to Tiferet, the sun, and then finally through Dart and then up to Keter, where it's reunited with the Ein Sof, the infinite light. And the Zohar describes this passage as one of purification rather than punishment. The soul that clings to material attachment experiences refinement in Gehenna, a realm of cleansing fire, which is described in the Zohar as follows. In Gehenna, there are certain places where souls that have been polluted by the filth of this world are purified by fire and made white. But if you are righteous and pure, and you've done lots of meditation and got rid of all that baggage, then you can ascend to what they call Gan Eden, which is described in the Zohar as when souls encircled with an aura of light, the result of righteous living, ascend on high to the sphere especially prepared for those who have attained eternal life. They enter Gan Eden. Interestingly, the Zohar teaches that for the perfected or purified souls, death itself ceases to exist. Moses and Jacob, it says, did not truly die but merely passed into another mode of being. Death then is not an end as many believe, but rather a revelation, an unveiling of what has always been eternal. And so through inner work and contemplation of the Sephirot, the divine emanations of light, along with meditation on the sacred names and the 72 Shemhan Mepharesh, one can restore harmony and bring more light into the world. And when invoked with pure intention, these names channel spiritual energies that can correct distortions within the soul and helping one to transcend the wheel of karma and reincarnation. As Luria writes, a soul whose root is in Absolute, that descends into Azaya as a result of blemish. If he exits Asaya, he is certainly able to be rectified during the course of his lifetime and ascend from level to level until he enters the union of Absolute, which is where his soul's root is from, and he is reintegrated into that place, and he will not need to reincarnate. It's thought that once the work of tikkun is completed, then it will culminate in a vision of Olam Haba, the world to come, where all souls reunite with their ideal forms. And this is kind of like an idealized state where the divisions of matter and spirit will dissolve and creation will be restored to its primordial wholeness. In this way, the work of tikkun isn't just about personal healing, but it's also about caring for and communing with the souls of our ancestors who came before us. And many traditions both Pagans, Jewish, ancient Egypt share this idea that the living can help the dead find peace, and in doing so bring balance to the world. And around the time of Halloween or Samhain, people have long believed that the boundaries between the living and the dead are thinner, making it easier to remember and connect with the ancestors. In Judaism, we get prayers like the Kaddish or learning Torah. It's believed that they're ways of helping a soul move closer to wholeness. And in older pagan traditions, we obviously have lighting candles, sharing food, and speaking the names of the dead. And there's also various, people still doing this on a daily basis as well, with various different ancestor worship as part of their magical practice as well. But whatever we do, we can see it as being a form of remembrance, as a form of healing, a way for us, the living, and the dead to work together in restoring harmony and moving towards a vision of the future where everything is lost is made whole again. As the Druid Emma Restal Orr wrote, when we honour or revere our ancestors, we are acknowledging those of our own blood, those who have lived on the land where we live, and those of our heritage whose teachings we now seek to comprehend. Our reverence comes not from a sense of these folk having been heroes, for they are often as flawed as we are. Our reverence is based on the perception of where or how they are. For the dead are in the wind, as breath and words spoken, songs sung. They are in the waters of our land which hold so much memory. They are in the mud that nourished them, which their bodies nourished when they died. They are in our blood, in the stories told, in the mistakes we make, in the lessons we have learnt, in each child's smile, in every ploughed field, each glimpse of hope. Our ancestors are all around and within us. As such, it is through them that we are able to find that exquisite connection with nature. This is what we revere. This is what we give thanks for. Raising our mead horn in their honour, remembering their name and their stories. That's all we have time for today, but I wanted to end by saying that a good way to think about the Kabbalah and death is as a tool of transformation, one that shifts the contemplation of death from a meditation on a loss to a meditation on return and renewal. When we die, we take part in the same process that sustains the cosmos, the continual outflow and inflow of divine light from the Ein Sof all the way down to Malkut. And the Gilgul, the tikkun of the Jewish traditions, or the alchemical transmutation of Western Hermeticism, or other spiritual practices, all point towards the same work, the purification of the psyche into spirit, the purification of matter into gold. In the end, all of these traditions converge on the same insight, that death is the soul's initiation into greater life, and overcoming the fear of death and building a relationship with it should really be part of living. Just as the goal of the initiates as at Eleusis in ancient Greece was to remove the fear of death, we too can, through our spiritual or magical practice, begin to awaken to the same truth, that death is not something to fear, but rather, as J.M. Barrie wrote in Peter Pan, to die would be an awfully big adventure. Or in the Gospel of Thomas, where Jesus speaks to his disciples and tells them, when they ask about his death, have you discovered then the beginning, that you look for the end? For where the beginning is, there will be the end. Blessed is he who will take his place in the beginning. He will know the end and will not experience death. And also, as Sophocles is meant to have written about the way of initiation, thrice blessed are those who goes to Hades, after beholding these rites. To them alone it is given to live there. To others, everything there is evil. Thanks so much for everyone who's listened today. I really hope you enjoyed it and found something to think about. If you have any questions or thoughts, then you can please feel free to email me. The email is in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do that through Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. To finish, I wanted to share a poem by Aleister Crowley that explores the theme of death, not as an ending, but as a transformation and a return to the source. This is Happy Dust. Snow that fallest from heaven, bear me aloft on thy wings, to the domes of the star-girdled seven, the abode of ineffable things. Quintessence of joy and of strength, that abolishing future and past, makest the present an infinite length, my soul all one with the vast. The lone, the unnameable God, that is ice of his measureless cold, without being or form or abode, without motion or matter the fold. Where the shepherded universe sleeps, with nor sense nor delusion nor dream, no spirit that wantons or weeps, no thought in its silence supreme. I sit and am utterly still, in mine eyes is my fathomless lust, ablaze to annihilate will, to crumble my beings to dust, to calcine the dust to an ash, to burn up the ash to an air, to abolish the air with a flash of the final, the fulminant flare. All this I have done, and dissolved the primordial germ of my thoughts. I have rolled myself up and revolved the wheel of my being to naught. Is there even the memory left? That I was, that I am, it is lost. As I utter the word, I am cleft by the last swift spear of the frost. Snow, I am nothing at last. I sit and am utterly still. They are perished, the phantoms and past. They were born of my weariness will. When I craved being and form, when the consciousness cloud was a mist, precursor of stupor and storm, when I and my shadow had kissed, and brought into life all the shapes that confused the clear space with their marks, vain spectres whose vapour escapes, a whirlwind of ruinous sparks. No substance have any of these, I have dreamed them in sickness of lust, delirium born of disease. Ah, whence was the master, the must? Imposed on the all, is it true, then that something in me is subject to fate? Are there two? After all, that can be. I have brought all that is to an end, for myself am sufficient and sole. Do I trick myself now? Shall I rend once again this homogeneous whole? I have stripped every garment from space, I have strangled the secrets of time, all being is fled from my face, with motion's inhibited rhyme. Stiller and stiller I sit, till in even infinity fades. 'Tis an idle, 'tis weakness of wit, that breeds in inanity shades. Yet the fullness of thought I become, the deepest and steadiest naught, contains in its nature the sum of the functions of being and thought. Still as I sit and destroy all possible traces of the past, all germ of the future, nor joy nor knowledge alive at the last. It is vain, for the silence is dowered with a nature, the seed of a name, necessity fearfully flowered with the blossom of possible aim. I am necessity, scry necessity, mother of fate, and fate determines me, and I have the will to create. Vast is the sphere, but it turns on itself like the pettiest star, and I am the lobby that learns all that things equally are. Inscrutable nothing, the gods, the cosmos of fire and of mist, sun's atoms, the clouds and the clouds, ineluctably dare to exist. I have made the voyage of thought, the voyage of vision I swam, to the heart of the ocean of naught, from the source of the spring of I am. I know myself wholly, the brother alike of the all and the one. I know that all things are each other, that their sum and their substance is none. But the knowledge itself can excel, its fullness has broken its bond, all's truth and all's falsehood as well, and what of the region beyond? So still though I sit, as ever, I stab to the heart of my spine, I destroy the last seed of endeavour to seal up the soul in the shrine of silence, eternity, peace. I abandon the here and the now, I cease from the effort to cease, I absolve the dead from its vow. I am wholly content to be dust, whether that be a mote or a star, to live and to love and to lust, acknowledge what seems for what are, not to care what I am if I be, whence I came, whither go, how I thrive, if my spirit be bound or by free, save as nature contrive. What I am, that I am, 'tis enough, I am part of a glorious game. Am I cast for madness or love? I am cast to esteem them the same. Am I only a dream in the sleep of some butterfly, phantom of fright, conceived who knows how or how deep, in the measureless womb of the night? I imagine impossible thoughts, metaphysical voids that beget, ideas entangle, wrought, to things less conceivable yet. It may be little I reck, but I assume the existence of earth. Am I born to be hanged by the neck, a curse from the hour of my birth? Am I born to not abolish man's guilt, his horrible heritage or a seed in his wantonness spilt, by a jester I care not a straw? For I understand, do what thou wilt, and that is the whole of the law.